exercising power. Labor leaders aren't talking about it much publicly now, but this tension played out explicitly in the Obama administration. Obama campaigned on a key labor priority called the Employee Free Choice Act, or card check, which would have made it much easier for workers to be able to unionize. But at the beginning of the administration, Obama decided to prioritize his Mitt Romney-style health care without a public option and with a so-called Cadillac tax, which was basically a giant screw you to unions. They would ultimately put little to no political capital behind passing the Employee Free Choice Act, which then predictably failed.
Okay, some very clever sound bites there, and they no doubt serve a specific narrative, but they do so at the expense of misinforming the viewer, and keeping them unaware of the long drawn-out fight, and multiple attempts to keep the public option in the healthcare bill. So let's go back 11 years, which in the age of social media, may as well be the Triassic. The Employee Free Choice Act actually passed through the House in 2007. In the Senate, there was a vote to end the debate on the bill, with 48 Democrats, 2 independents, and 1 Republican in favor, with 1 Democrat not voting, and 48 Republicans against the bill. 60 votes would have been needed to end the debate, aka break the filibuster. Remember, this was voted almost entirely along party lines. Every Senate Democrat with the exception of 1 voted yay, and every Republican minus 1 vote nay. But fast forward to 2009. It was clear that the Democrats could not secure a filibuster-proof majority, since a handful of Democrats weren't going along, and so far as I can tell, no Republicans were in favor of the bill. On the other hand, Obama's healthcare plan, which Democrats had just passed in the House, and at the time, still included a public option, appeared to have 60 supporters in the Senate. So yes, it got prioritized, because it actually had a chance to pass, and it still had a public option at this point and therefore wasn't Romneycare. Unfortunately, Senator Lieberman, who was needed in order to break a filibuster, would do a 180 and threaten a filibuster should the healthcare plan include a public option.
Finally, we have less than a minute left. The House passed health care. What do you think of the bill they passed? And do you still intend, if there is a public option and if there's this tax on so-called Cadillac health plans, will you support a Republican filibuster on final passage in the Senate?
Well, there's some good things in the House passed plan. You know, I think we ought to do health care reform this year to deal with the 2 great problems that President Obama and others have talked about. There are unsustainable, continuing increases in the cost of health care. We've got to stop that. And there are millions of Americans who don't have health insurance. But I'm afraid that our colleagues in the House added a lot onto that subtract from the genuine purposes of health care reform. And one was to create a public option plan. The public option plan is unnecessary. It has been put forward, I'm convinced, by people who really want the government to take over all of health insurance. They got a right to do that. I think that would be wrong.
After this, concessions would be needed to be made to holdouts, and this included dropping the public plan and turning into a plan, similar to what Mitt Romney passed in Massachusetts but which would never pass on a national level under a GOP administration, as should be obvious by the GOP's opposition to Obamacare. So, if we want to lambaste Senator Joe Lieberman for the death of the public plan, he is fair game. His change of heart was correctly reported by The Hill. Krystal? But sharing these details, that the healthcare plan passed the House with a public plan and almost passed through the Senate, all thanks to Democrats until an independent senator had a last-minute change of heart, doesn't fit well into the lucrative anti-establishment narrative. I mean, I agree, screw the establishment. But I think they are bad enough without having to create this false equivalency and providing cover for the Republican Party by hiding the fact that they've been the ones stopping much of this progress, and pretending that the Democrats didn't even try to get these things passed. Unfortunately, it seems that channels like these, who have been my go-to channels for accurate information, are beginning to prioritize an anti-establishment narrative over accuracy. This is the unfortunate reality of quote-unquote alternative media. They are to a large degree a mirror of the mainstream media. If you're sick and tired of misinformation mixed with truth in favor of the establishment, you now have access to misinformation mixed with truth, to the detriment of the establishment. In both cases, There is an ends justify the means mindset. It's okay to misinform by prioritizing your narrative so long as your narrative is the correct one. No doubt, this is what Sean Hannity believes.